They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but as I watched Julian Thorne's face drain of all color in that boardroom, I realized it tastes even better when served with a $6 billion acquisition deal. The night it all began feels like a lifetime ago now, though it was only yesterday. I had arrived at Chateau Beverly, one of those restaurants where the waiters judge you before you even speak, and the wine list costs more than most people's monthly rent. My simple navy blazer stood out like a sore thumb among the designer gowns and tailored suits, but I held my head high. After all, I was there at my parents' invitation, not because I belonged in that world of superficial glamour. Julian was already seated when I arrived, his Armani suit catching the soft lighting in a way that screamed money. My brother had always known how to present himself, how to command attention without saying a word. He was discussing something with our parents, gesturing with his hands in that confident way surgeons do when they think they own the world. The moment he saw me, that familiar smirk crossed his face, the one that had haunted me through medical school, through my residency, through every family gathering where I was reminded that I was the disappointment. "Oh, Nadia," he said before I even sat down, his voice dripping with that particular brand of condescension he'd perfected over the years. "I thought you'd be too busy saving the world at that little clinic of yours. What is it called again? Beacon Health? Right between the dry cleaners and the pet store, if I remember correctly." How quaint. Our mother laughed nervously, the kind of laugh that told me she wished I hadn't come. Our father simply adjusted his glasses and studied the menu, a habit he'd developed whenever Julian decided to use me as his verbal punching bag. They never defended me. Not once in all these years. "It's been a busy week," I said simply, settling into my chair and placing my worn leather bag beside me. Inside that bag was a document that would change everything, but they didn't need to know that yet. "Busy?" Julian leaned back, swirling his wine with practiced ease. "I suppose treating runny noses and prescribing antibiotics does keep one occupied, though I imagine it's nothing like my schedule." "Did Mother tell you about my latest neurosurgery?" 6 hours, saved a Fortune 500 CEO's life. The board at Olympus Medical Center is talking about naming a wing after me. "How wonderful," our mother gushed, her eyes bright with the kind of pride she'd never shown for my work in underserved communities. "Julian has really made something of himself, hasn't he, Nadia? Perhaps he could help you find a position at a real hospital." The word real hung in the air like a slap. My clinic, where I'd treated thousands of patients who couldn't afford Olympus Medical Center's astronomical fees, wasn't real to them. The mobile units I'd deployed to reach homeless populations weren't real. The preventive care programs that had reduced emergency room visits by 30% in our coverage areas weren't real. Julian reached for his water glass and deliberately knocked it over, the liquid spreading across the white tablecloth toward me. Without looking at me, he snapped his fingers and pointed at the spill, expecting me to clean it up like I was the help. I didn't move. "Nadia," my father said sharply, "get your brother a napkin." "The waiter will handle it," I replied evenly, meeting Julian's eyes. Something flickered there. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance that I wasn't playing my assigned role. The waiter appeared instantly, as they do in places like this, and cleaned up the mess with practiced efficiency. Julian barely acknowledged him, too busy launching into another story about his surgical prowess, about the state-of-the-art equipment at his disposal, about the team of specialists who hung on his every word. "You know," he said, cutting into his $60 steak, "I was talking to some colleagues about healthcare accessibility the other day. We all agreed that these small clinics, these so-called community health centers, they're really just band-aids on a broken system. No equipment, no specialists, no real ability to provide comprehensive care. It's almost cruel, giving people false hope like that." My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my CFO. "Final valuation confirmed. $6.8 billion. Board meeting set for 7 a.m. Olympus Medical Center acquisition complete." I smiled. The first genuine smile of the evening. "Something funny?" Julian asked, his tone sharp. "I'm discussing the future of healthcare, and you're checking your phone? How professional." "Just work," I said, tucking my phone away. You were saying something about comprehensive care? Yes, well, it's simple really. Places like Olympus Medical Center represent the future. We're expanding, you know. There's talk of a merger with Titan Health Systems. They're the largest integrated health network in the state. Of course, they'd never look twice at a strip mall clinic. He laughed at his own joke, and our parents joined in weakly. Titan Health Systems, I repeated slowly, savoring each word. Yes, I've heard of them. Of course you have. Everyone in healthcare has. They're revolutionary. Starting from nothing 5 years ago and building an empire. Though I doubt their CEO would waste time with someone at your level. He pulled out a gold-embossed business card and slid it across the table. Here. When your little experiment fails, give me a call. I might be able to get you something in general practice at Olympus. Nothing fancy, but steady work. I picked up the card, studied it for a moment, then set it down carefully beside my water glass. In my jacket pocket, my own card seemed to burn against my ribs. Dr. Nadia Sharma, CEO, Titan Health Systems, embossed in subtle gold lettering. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of Julian's stories and my parents' admiration. They talked about his vacation home in Malibu, his Tesla collection, his upcoming feature in Medical Excellence Quarterly. Not once did they ask about my work, about the patients whose lives we'd saved, about the innovative integrated care model I'd developed that was being studied by the CDC. As we waited for dessert, Julian's phone rang. He answered it with that self-important air he'd cultivated, but I watched his expression change from smugness to confusion to something approaching panic. What do you mean the board called an emergency meeting tomorrow morning? He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. This is about the Titan acquisition? But I'm the head of neurosurgery. I should have been consulted. He ended the call and looked at me, really looked at me for the first time all evening. Something in my expression must have given me away because his eyes widened slightly. You wouldn't know anything about this, would you? He asked slowly. I stood, smoothing my simple blazer. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. You know how it is, Julian. Success doesn't wait for anyone. The Uber ride home felt like floating. 5 years of 18-hour days, 5 years of begging for loans, 5 years of being told my vision was too ambitious, too idealistic, too impossible. Tomorrow, I would walk into Olympus Medical Center not as Julian's disappointment of a sister, but as his boss. My apartment in Culver City was modest compared to Julian's Beverly Hills mansion, but it was mine, earned with my own sweat and tears. I sat on my second-hand couch and pulled out the acquisition documents, running my fingers over the signatures that made it official. 250 clinics across California, integrated with mental health services, substance abuse programs, and preventive care initiatives. We'd built it quietly, strategically, using technology to connect services that traditional hospitals kept siloed. While Julian was bragging about his surgeries, I was revolutionizing healthcare delivery. While he was collecting accolades, I was collecting clinics, practices, and partnerships. While he was looking down on me, I was building the infrastructure that would swallow his precious hospital whole. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Tomorrow would be the culmination of everything I'd worked for, but more than that, it would be vindication. Every snide comment, every dismissive laugh, every moment of being made to feel less than it had all led to this. The next morning came with a brilliant Los Angeles sunrise. I dressed carefully in a white suit I'd bought specifically for this occasion, paired with heels that would put me at eye level with Julian. Marcus met me in the parking garage of Titan Tower, our headquarters that most of the medical community didn't even know existed yet. The helicopter's ready, he said, his usually serious face cracked with a small smile. The press release goes out the moment you walk into that boardroom. And Julian? Already there, from what our sources say. He's been trying to convince the board to block the sale for the last hour. Let him try. The flight to Olympus Medical Center took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to transform from the daughter who disappointed to the CEO who conquered. As we descended onto the hospital's helipad, I could see the gathering crowd below, the news vans already arriving. Word was spreading fast. The boardroom was on the 15th floor. its glass walls offering a panoramic view of Los Angeles. I could hear Julian's voice from the hallway, loud and desperate, making promises about profitability and innovation. I waited outside, letting him exhaust himself, letting him make his final stand. The boardroom secretary, a woman I'd met once at a medical conference where she'd pointedly ignored me, now stood up straight when she saw me approach. "Dr. Sharma," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "they're expecting you." I nodded and pushed open the heavy glass doors. The room fell silent instantly. Julian was mid-gesture, his hand frozen in the air as he turned to face me. The board members, 12 of the most powerful people in Los Angeles healthcare, all turned to look. At the far end of the table sat my parents, apparently called in by Julian to provide some kind of character testimony. My mother's face went white. My father's hands trembled as he set down his coffee cup. "Don't stop on my account," I said, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I walked to the head of the table. "Please, Dr. Thorne, continue your presentation about why this acquisition shouldn't proceed." Julian's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You," he managed finally, "how are you here?" The board chairman, Mr. Davidson, cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Dr. Nadia Sharma, CEO of Titan Health Systems and, as of 7 o'clock this morning, the new owner of Olympus Medical Center." The sound Julian made wasn't quite a word. It was more primal than that, a strangled noise of disbelief and rage. His laser pointer clattered to the floor, the sound echoing in the silent room. I opened my laptop and connected it to the presentation system, replacing Julian's slides with my own. The first slide showed a map of California, dots of light indicating each of our clinic locations, then the hospitals we'd quietly acquired, then the partnerships we'd formed. It looked like a constellation, with Olympus Medical Center as just one star among many. 5 years ago, I began, my voice steady and clear. I started with a single clinic in a strip mall. Yes, Dr. Thorne, between a dry cleaner and a pet store. That clinic now serves 12,000 patients annually. It was the prototype for a new model of healthcare delivery, one that prioritizes accessibility and preventive care over profit margins. I clicked to the next slide, showing our financial growth trajectory. While traditional hospitals like Olympus were focusing on high-margin procedures and wealthy patients, we were building a network that serves everyone. Our emergency room diversions have saved the state $40 million. Our preventive care programs have reduced diabetes complications by 35% in our service areas. And yes, we did all this while maintaining a profit margin that allowed us to expand to 250 locations. Julian found his voice. "This is impossible. You're lying. There's no way you could have built a healthcare empire while you were dismissing me as playing doctor?" I looked at him directly. "You were so busy looking down that you never saw me rising above you." My mother stood up shakily. "Nadia, I don't understand. How did I buy the hospital where your precious son works? The same way I've done everything else in my life, Mother. Without your help, without your belief, and certainly without your approval." I turned back to the presentation. Olympus Medical Center will be integrated into our network effective immediately. All department heads will undergo performance reviews. Some positions may be restructured to align with our care philosophy. I paused, looking directly at Julian. "Including the position of head of neurosurgery." Julian lunged forward, slamming his hands on the table. "You can't do this. I built that department. I am Olympus Medical Center." "No," I said calmly. "You were Olympus Medical Center. Now you're an employee under review. And based on your patient satisfaction scores, which are surprisingly low for someone of your supposed caliber, that review might not go in your favor." I clicked to another slide, this one showing patient feedback for Julian's department versus our integrated neurology services. The contrast was stark. "But I'm not vindictive," I continued, pulling out a single sheet of paper from my folder. "Beacon Health Clinic, the one you mocked so thoroughly last night, is looking for a general practitioner. The pay is modest, but the work is rewarding. You'd be serving the community, seeing a diverse patient population, really getting back to the roots of medicine. I placed the job posting on the table in front of him. Of course, you'd have to lose the attitude. Our patients deserve respect, regardless of their economic status. Julian stared at the paper as if it might burst into flames. You planned this, he whispered. Last night, you sat there and let me humiliate you, knowing this was coming. Humiliate me? I laughed, and it felt like freedom. Julian, you haven't been able to humiliate me for years. Last night was just dinner theater, a final performance before the curtain fell. My phone buzzed with notifications. The press release had gone live. Within minutes, every major healthcare publication would be running the story. The scrappy clinic doctor who built an empire. The David who became Goliath. Mr. Davidson stood, extending his hand to me. Dr. Sharma, we look forward to working with you. Your vision for integrated care aligns perfectly with the future of healthcare. One by one, the board members stood, offering congratulations and handshakes. They filed out, leaving me alone with my family. Julian had collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. My parents stood frozen, as if unable to process what they'd witnessed. All these years, my father said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, we thought you were wasting your potential. No, I said, gathering my things. You thought I was wasting my potential. There's a difference between thinking small and starting small. You never could see that. My mother reached out as if to touch me, then let her hand fall. Nadia, we're still your family. Family? I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not the mother I'd wanted but the woman she'd always been. Family doesn't keep score. Family doesn't assign worth based on perceived success. Family supports you when you're struggling to build something meaningful, not just when you've already succeeded. I turned to Julian, who still hadn't moved. The job offer is genuine, by the way. Beacon Health could use someone with your technical skills, if you can learn some humility. Consider it a chance to start over, to become the doctor you might have been if ego hadn't gotten in the way. As I walked to the door, I stopped and looked back one more time. Oh, and Julian? That wing they were going to name after you? It's being renamed. The Beacon Community Care Wing has a nice ring to it, don't you think? The elevator ride down felt like descending from a mountaintop. Outside, reporters were already gathering, drawn by the biggest healthcare acquisition story of the year. Marcus met me at the entrance, tablet in hand. The integration teams are ready to deploy, he said. The press wants a statement, and the governor's office called they want to discuss implementing our model statewide. I nodded, straightening my jacket. Let's give them their statement. As I stepped out into the Los Angeles sunshine, cameras flashing and reporters calling out questions, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Every night spent reviewing patient charts in my tiny apartment. Every loan application rejected. Every conference where I was ignored or patronized at it had all been worth it. The little clinic between the dry cleaner and the pet store was now the flagship of a healthcare revolution. The girl who was told to fetch napkins for her brother now held his career in her hands. The disappointment had become the success story. That evening, I returned to my apartment in Culver City. It seemed smaller somehow, or maybe I had grown too large for it. Tomorrow I would move to the CEO suite at Titan Tower. But tonight, I wanted to be here, in the space where I dreamed and planned and refused to give up. My phone had been ringing all day with congratulations from colleagues, requests for interviews, and offers of partnership. But there was one message that stood out, a voicemail from an unknown number. Nadia. Julian's voice was different, stripped of its usual arrogance. I know you probably won't listen to this, but I need you to know something. I've been at Olympus since my residency. It's all I know. The surgeries, the prestige, the salary, I thought that was success. But watching you today, seeing what you built while I was busy mocking you, I was wrong. About everything. About you. The job at Beacon Health, is it really available? Because maybe it's time I learned what being a doctor actually means. I saved the message, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder that empires aren't built on revenge but on vision. Julian had been a catalyst, nothing more. My success wasn't about proving him wrong, it was about proving myself right. 3 months later, I stood in what used to be Julian's office, now transformed into a community meeting space where patients could provide feedback on their care. The walls that once held his degrees and awards now displayed children's drawings from our pediatric unit and thank you letters from patients. Through the window, I could see Julian in the parking lot below, arriving for his shift at Beacon Health. He drove a Honda now, having sold his Tesla to pay off the debt he'd accumulated trying to maintain his lifestyle. He looked tired but somehow lighter, as if the weight of his own ego had finally lifted. My parents had reached out several times, trying to rebuild our relationship. I'd agreed to coffee, nothing more, and only if they could acknowledge what they'd done. My mother cried through the entire meeting. My father couldn't meet my eyes. They wanted forgiveness, but I wasn't ready to give it. Some wounds cut too deep to heal quickly. Dr. Sharma? Marcus knocked on the door. The CDC delegation is here for the presentation. I nodded, taking one last look at the transformation of what had been Olympus Medical Center. The gold-plated signs had been replaced with simple, clean directories. The VIP suites had been converted to additional patient rooms. The executive dining room was now a cafeteria where doctors ate alongside janitors. Let's show them what healthcare can be when you remove ego from the equation, I said. As we walked to the conference room, we passed the new mission statement engraved in the wall. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Excellence is measured in lives saved, not profits earned. Every patient deserves dignity, regardless of their ability to pay. Julian had mocked those ideals. My parents had dismissed them as naive. The medical establishment had ignored them. But $6 billion and a healthcare revolution later, they had become the foundation of something unprecedented. The American dream, they say, is about rising from nothing to something. But I'd learned it was more than that. It was about rising despite those who tried to keep you down, about building something meaningful while others were busy building monuments to themselves, about maintaining your values even when success would have been easier if you'd abandoned them. As I began my presentation to the CDC, showing them how our model had reduced healthcare disparities across California, I thought about that dinner at Chateau Beverly. Julian had been right about one thing: success doesn't wait for anyone. But he'd been wrong about everything else. Success isn't measured in surgical wings named after you or business cards embossed with gold. It's measured in the mother who can afford her child's insulin, the veteran who doesn't have to choose between mental health care and rent, the elderly man who receives preventive care before he needs emergency surgery. The CDC approved our model for national implementation that day. Within a year, Titan Health Systems would expand to 12 states. Julian would complete his retraining at Beacon Health and eventually become one of our most dedicated community physicians, though we never became close. My parents would continue reaching out, and maybe someday I'd find it in myself to forgive them fully. But that evening, as Los Angeles glowed golden in the setting sun, I stood alone in my new office and allowed myself one moment of pure satisfaction. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because I'd proven that compassion and business acumen weren't mutually exclusive, that you could build an empire on empathy, that the American dream was still alive for those willing to work for it and fight for it. The girl who'd been told to fetch napkins had become the woman who revolutionized healthcare. The disappointment had become the disruption. The one who didn't belong had built a place where everyone belonged, and that, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all.